Good morning, first grade foxes. So last week we started Domain 10 in New Nation and we did the first two read alouds. So today we're going to start with lesson 3, and the title of this read aloud is The Shot Heard Round the World. So I want you to listen for these words today: belfry, militia, obeyed, signal, spies, and volunteers. And your purpose for listening today, I want you to listen. This is what you're going to listen for in the read aloud. So the title of this read aloud is The Shot Heard Round the World. I want you to make a prediction. Do you remember what that is? A guess of what you think the main topic or main idea is in this read aloud. So if you want to pause the video for a second, you can do that and write down your prediction of what you think this read aloud is going to be about. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you, and I want you to see if your prediction was correct. After the Boston Tea Party, King George sent thousands of British soldiers to Boston to make sure the colonists obeyed the king's orders, or to make sure that the colonists did as the king ordered them to do. They swarmed the streets of the city in their fancy red uniforms with shiny buttons, earning themselves the name of Redcoats. They carried weapons with them everywhere they went. This made the people of Boston very angry. The city no longer felt like home to them. They did not know whom to trust. Spies, or people who secretly kept watch on other people to try to figure out what they were up to, spread out all over the city. British soldiers disguised as colonists, and colonists disguised as British soldiers. There was lots of whispering in the streets as people kept secrets from one another. It was not very pleasant and even a little scary. Paul Revere was a silversmith living in Boston. As a silversmith, he was kept quite busy making and repairing silver dinnerware, candlesticks, and jewelry. A sign with a silver pitcher hung outside his shop on the town square. One day, the door to his shop flew open and a friend rushed over to Revere's side. The two men were both members of the Sons of Liberty, the group of patriots who had emptied tea into Boston's harbor. Ever since the Boston Tea Party, the colonists of Massachusetts had been hiding weapons, gunpowder, and cannonballs in neighboring towns. The British, afraid the colonists might be planning to attack them, captured the weapons whenever they learned where they were hidden. Why do you think the colonists might have started hiding these materials? Now, as the two men huddled together in the back of Revere's shop, his friend whispered that the British were planning to raid the colonist storehouse of weapons in the town of Concord. The British were to travel that night, he said, but nobody knew whether they would march there by land or choose the shorter route and sail on a boat by sea. The patriots knew they must somehow warn the militia in Concord. Now, a militia is an army of ordinary people, not trained soldiers. Revere asked a friend to spy on, or secretly watch over, the British to discover the soldiers' plans. Then he arranged for a signal to be given, a secret code, to let him know the answer to his question. His friend was to climb up the bell tower of the Old North Church, light one lantern, and hang it in the belfry, or the bell tower, if the British are traveling on foot by land, Revere told his friend. But if they are traveling on a boat by sea, hang 2 lanterns. That night, after dark, Paul Revere left his family and crept down to the banks of the Charles River. He quietly rowed his boat across the river to a spot where fellow patriots waited with a horse, saddled and ready to go. Mounting the horse, Paul Revere watched the church, waiting patiently for a signal. It wasn't long before he spotted a light in the tower. 1 light, then 2. Ah, he said to himself, just as I thought. They've chosen the quickest way, by water, where fewer people are apt or able to see them. Then I shall go by land, arriving before they do." Tipping his hat in thanks to the patriots, he sped away. As he galloped through towns along the way, Revere shouted to the colonists in their beds, "The redcoats are coming! The redcoats are coming!" All around him, shutters were thrown open as people began waking in the middle of the night. When Revere reached the town of Lexington with word of the approaching British troops, men hurried from their homes, joining one another with their muskets in the middle of the town. These men, known as Minutemen because they were expected to be ready to fight at a minute's notice, slept with their muskets and gunpowder beside their beds. At dawn, the British reached Lexington. The Minutemen were farmers and shopkeepers, volunteers for their country, not trained soldiers. Volunteers choose to do a job without being paid. They looked ragged next to the well-dressed British soldiers or redcoats. In the confusion of the early morning hours, a shot was fired. Others fired back, and fighting continued throughout the morning. Finally, Minutemen were able to force the British to return to Boston, firing at them from behind rocks, trees, and fences all along the way. To this day, no one knows who fired the first shot that day. Nerves had been on edge since the Boston Tea Party, so it is not surprising that guns went off. That first shot was the beginning of a long war between the British and the American colonies. It is known as the shot heard round the world because not only did it change life in the colonies, but it also changed things around the world in Great Britain, all the way across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, if you have a map or a globe at home, you can look up Great Britain, which is on the other side of the world from where the British colonies were. So the people in Great Britain couldn't actually hear the shot fired that morning. This is a famous saying that simply means that the shot had a big effect on Great Britain and on the entire world. That long war became known as the Revolutionary War. Could it be that the shot heard round the world rang out so loudly from the Massachusetts colony that it actually reached King George's ears that April morning? What do you think? So here is a video that you can watch on YouTube, and it's a Schoolhouse Rock video, so it's definitely an old school video, but it is a great video to watch. So if you attach the link at the top of the slide, if you want to type that in, or you can just search for Schoolhouse Rock shot heard around the world, and this would be a good video for you to watch today as well. Now here are your questions for this read aloud. So question 1. Were your predictions about the main topic or the main idea of the read aloud correct? Why or why not? And what is the main topic of this read aloud? Number 2, how did Paul Revere help the colonists? Number 3, why do you think Paul Revere was willing to do this? Number 4, what does the well-known phrase, 1, if by land, and 2, if by sea, mean? Number 5, who were the Redcoats and who were the Minutemen? Now here's your think, pair, shared. Obviously it's kind of hard to think, pair, share at home, but you can talk about it yourself or maybe practice writing down the answer just to get some writing practice in. What was the shot heard round the world? And do you think there would have been a shot heard round the world if Paul Revere had not made this ride? Now in the read aloud you heard, the Minutemen were farmers and shopkeepers, volunteers for their country, not trained soldiers. Say the word volunteers with me. Volunteers. Volunteers are people who do something without being paid or told to do it. For an example would be, there are many volunteers at the fire station. Now I want you to think of some places where volunteers might help out. So I'm going to describe a situation, and if it describes people helping out without being paid or told to do something, you're going to answer, they are volunteers. If it does not, you will say, they are not volunteers. Number 1, Tony and John were paid $10 to rake the leaves in their neighbor's yard. Example 2, Lisa and Pablo offered to pick up the litter on the playground. Situation 3, the teacher was amazed that 10 students asked if they could help clean up the art supplies. Situation 4, Maria and Hannah were paid $5 to babysit their little brother. In situation 5, Jeff and Lila asked if they could take their grandparents' dog for a walk. Now, just like last week, they have split up for the read aloud to be on Monday, and then a writing activity Tuesday, a read aloud Wednesday, writing activity Thursday, and then I've been doing culminating activities for you guys on Friday. So for this read aloud, you have 2 options for writing. The first one, option 1, is going to be about or using your word of the day or word work, volunteers. And I want you, I've divided it into 3 parts, and I want you to draw 3 examples of a way that you or an adult can volunteer. And in your draft, I want you to explain what a volunteer is and use these 3 examples that you drew and tell what makes them a volunteer. Your second option for writing, and this is the one that's in your packet, I did a 3-part plan for you guys, so you have a beginning, a middle, and end, and I want you to kind of retell the events that happened and that led up to the shot heard round the world. So your prompt in the packet says, why is the shot heard round the world an important event? So I want you to draw the beginning, middle, and end from this read aloud to write about what happened up to the time of the shot heard around the world, so the events that happened in this read aloud, and then at the end of your draft, tell why the shot heard around the world was so important. I hope you guys have a great Monday, and I'll see you soon. Bye.